Hey there. How you doing, guys? Gabe DeArmond. Sean Williams here. He's on, I don't know, left side of your screen, right side of your screen. I don't know how you're looking at this. He's on the right side of my screen. I am Gabe DeArmond. This is the Tuesday Tiger Recruiting Show. We are back for another year. We're going to try to do this at 2:30 on every Tuesday until I text Sean and say I've got something going on, or Sean texts me, says he's got something going on, and then we're going to do it at a different time, and you're just going to have to deal with that. So anyway, Sean,
It's
what's
life,
up,
man. It's good, man. Good to be back for another year. Kind of almost forgot how to do this, but luckily you're running the ship, so I just got to plug in a microphone and talk. So,
I mean, that's realistically all I'm doing as well, to be quite honest with you. But hey, before we get going, I do want to kind of draw your guys' attention to our sponsor this year, and he's actually going to be our sponsor for today and for the football show I'm going to be doing with Gerard Hamilton, which is going to start tomorrow. But that is James Carlton with State Farm, with James Carlton State Farm Insurance in St. Louis. He's actually located in Webster Groves. You can see his contact information. We're going to leave that scrolling across the bottom of the screen for you all throughout the show in case you want to get in touch with James. CarltonInsurance.net. There's the phone number, 314-961-4800. It's going to be going across the bottom of the screen throughout this. So if you need a way to get in touch with James, you're going to be able to find it quickly. And every State Farm agency is independently owned, and James Carlton owns this one in St. Louis. He's got a team of 8 people. They're all located in Missouri. They can take care of you in Missouri or in Illinois. And James says right up front, he's not going to give you the hard sell. He just wants to get a chance to talk to you and get a chance to see what you can do. And he's a big Mizzou fan, and he's actually doing something for Mizzou fans, the NIL collective that has started up, which is called Advancing Missouri Athletes. If you contact James, whether it's online, in person, you give him a phone call, whatever, if you contact James and get an insurance quote, and you mentioned Power Mizzou, just tell him you heard about this on our broadcast or from our tweet or whatever. Every person that does that, he's going to make a $20 donation to Advancing Missouri Athletes, the NIL collective. You do not have to buy the policy from him. You do not have to become a customer of his for him to do that. He wants to do something to not only bring Missouri fans' attention to his business, but also to help out Missouri and its efforts in NIL. So make sure you do that. We'll remind you a couple times throughout the show, but James's information, again, is scrolling across the bottom of the screen there. And Sean, this is the recruiting show, so we're just going to start out. Is the appropriate time to panic about Missouri's 2022 recruiting class now or yesterday or 6 weeks ago? Like, everybody watching needs to know when they should panic.
I think it really depends on who you ask and how much alcohol they have consumed currently. So, I mean,
if you ask the message board, it's like 7 months ago, right?
Right. My opinion, time to be disappointed, sure. Time to panic, not yet. We'll wait and see what happens and see if they see what they kind of do. Like, hey, nobody's signing anything till December at least. So long way to go. Yeah, we'll see what happens. You never know when flips can happen, and people will be elated and they'll think this class is pretty good again. So
right, there is time, and the main thing to me is some perspective. This is not likely to be as good as Eli Drinkwitz's first 2 classes. I don't think this is going to rank in the top 20 because if you just look at who they're still in on, who's not committed other places, like there aren't a ton of 4-star kids on that list, but there are a couple. They've already got 3, and 3 years ago, if you had told a Missouri fan, hey, you're going to sign 5 or 6 4-stars in a class, Missouri fans are elated at that point, right? So you got to have a little bit of historical perspective. It's maybe not as good as the last 2 years would be what we think, but still better than what you were used to bringing in the 6, 7, 8 years before that. I think probably the major disappointment at this point is the offensive line stuff, right? I mean, Caden Green, we always knew it was going to be tough, but we thought it was possible. And finishing second in recruiting gets you absolutely nothing. So whatever. Missouri did finish second, I'm pretty confident. But I think the Miles McVay one is probably what's skewing people's view of this class a little bit, because for a long time, and not just everybody thought, hey, this kid's going to end up at Missouri, and everybody wants to know what changed. Well, What changed is Alabama said they'd take him. And when Alabama says that, there's not a lot of kids that say no.
Yeah, that's correct. And yeah, I mean, he was a wanted dude, and like I said, when Alabama comes calling, and he was down there quite a few times, so it gives you a lot of reason to worry leading into a commitment date. So I know he did get back to Missouri right before he announced his commitment, but that was kind of a tough blow. And I mean, Caden Green, you go back to that one, and Missouri made quite an impression on him. You talked to him after his official visit, and he kind of seemed like he was swaying back and forth there, and said Missouri did like a really great job on the visit. So there was some hope there, but then he ultimately went to Oklahoma, which is somewhere we thought he would go in the first place. So yeah, a couple of big misses there for some in-state kids. I mean, I say in-state, McVeigh is just right across the river, but you know what I mean.
That was one of those ones. The Caden Green thing was one of those ones where you want to go, all right, like, I'm not going to write this. I'm not going to put it out there. I just want to know, like, what actually is this close? Or look, have you known you were going to Oklahoma? Because it kind of got that feeling, right? Where, like, he said a lot of good things about Missouri. And then when he committed to Oklahoma, you just kind of were left there thinking, I wonder really if it was that close and it doesn't ultimately matter. It's just one of those things that, hey, as I say all the time, all we can print is what people tell us. And that does not always make it the truth, right?
Right. And, it could be, I don't know when you talked to him specifically what time, or maybe he was on the post-visit high, so had a lot of good impressions. And, kids say a lot of things that make you think they're swaying that way immediately after a visit. So, things can change, and, perspectives change once you get a night or two to sleep on it and kind of recollect your thoughts. So.
Yeah, and I should have said this at the top, but do want to invite you guys. We've got a few people that have made some comments, asked some questions over in the comment rail here, and we can see all those, and we will put them up on the screen and get to them. But feel free if you've got something to say. If you want to compliment us mostly, then feel free to do so in the comment section. We'll put that on the screen if you've got questions, anything along those lines. The other thing, and we'll get to the questions in a minute because they kind of lead into what I think is the big discussion of recruiting in this day and age, which is transfer stuff. But the other thing that can change about this is, I mean, our rankings are going to change 2 or 3 times. And Sean, now I know you're doing some national stuff with Rivals, and so you're kind of a part of some of those discussions now. And like, what if Jamal Roberts goes out and runs for 2,600 yards as a senior, right? Maybe all of a sudden he's a top 10 kid in the state. And so while we didn't think Missouri was going to have X number of top 10 kids, maybe they have 1 more or 2 more or something like that.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. We're ranking kids right now based on what they did during the summer, and camping and 7-on-7s, things like that. So, these next set of rankings that will come out, the end of November, early December, those are going to be based on senior film and what you did your senior season. So, some Missouri commits can have some big seasons and, move up the rankings and be top 10 players in the state. So that's definitely a possibility.
And we should mention some good news here, or at least what we think is going to be good news. It seems weird to me that September 8th is only like 2 weeks away, but I think it's 2 weeks from this Thursday is the commitment date for Logan Reichert, the like 7'9", 380-pound offensive lineman from Raytown High School. I mean, it's Missouri and Oregon, but I haven't really seen anybody make much of an argument for Oregon. Have you?
No, I think it's just a connection he had with Dan Lanning when he was at Georgia. And, he recruited him hard when he was there, and that has continued at Oregon. He got him up for an official visit this summer. I think Oregon's in it, but I think gut feeling is you see him go to Oregon or staying close to home to Missouri and playing in Missouri in front of his family. I think he'll probably end up picking Missouri. I mean, he's been to Missouri a ton of times. Like, I can't even count. Maybe it's probably over 10 at least. But of course, we said the same thing about Miles McVeigh, and you kind of saw what happened there. But
yeah, but
not to bring up bad memories.
Yeah, by the time McVeigh committed, we kind of knew
right.
what was going to happen. I mean, that was not like a last-minute switch. And hey, anything can happen in the next 2 weeks, but we'd be pretty surprised if it's not Missouri. I know we're planning to. So kind of wish he'd push it back a day because he's committing on Thursday, September 8th in Raytown. So Gerard and I are going to go up there, and then like Missouri's in Manhattan on the 10th. So we're just going to make a 4-day weekend out of going up to Kansas City because why drive home and drive back the other direction? As lovely as that drive across the state of Kansas is, I want to minimize the number of times I take it.
I mean, lots of things to do in Kansas City. Plenty of things to do in Manhattan, right? Is there? No.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm actually spending the night. We're spending the night before in Topeka because there are no affordable hotels rooms in Manhattan, and I can tell you unquestionably there's nothing to do in Topeka. Manhattan, I feel like might be a little bit better. Topeka is not my favorite town. I would rank it slightly above Wichita in terms of towns I'd want to spend the night in. So
okay.
Which is not a huge compliment. All right, so we're going to get to some of your guys' questions and comments, and they'll pop up on the screen there with your name. So, like, no vulgarity in your name. Your picture's going to be on there, everything. Just FYI, so you don't embarrass yourself. We
simple commands.
Right. We've seen some people log into Zooms and things with some strange names. So just be careful, if you want to get on the screen or if you don't want to be exposed. But so we're not exactly breaking news here because I did post this on our message board a couple hours ago. But Michael is asking how high of a priority is Marcus Clark in his dad competition or find a new starter. So Marcus Clark is a kid who played in every game for Miami last year. I think he started 4 of them. He's a cornerback. In the class of 2020, he was a 3-star kid. Miami had a coaching change. From what I've read, he was probably not going to be a starter this year. So he entered the transfer portal on Friday. He's gotten interest from a number of teams. He told me Missouri is among those teams. At one point, it was thought Marcus might make a commitment somewhere yesterday. That hasn't happened. He told me he didn't really have a time frame set for when he was going to commit. But anyway, Missouri is, in his words, highly on his mind. Definitely an option. So what other schools are, we're not sure at this point. But transfer cornerback, a kid who would – look, I don't want to project on NCAA rules, but if common sense prevails, he would sit out this year, use that as a redshirt year, and then have 3 more years left to play if he wanted to. I don't know, Sean, just before we get into kind of answering the question, I mean, how high of a priority is he? It seems like they would take him, but before we really get into that, just kind of what was your first reaction when you saw, hey, Missouri's involved maybe with this transfer DB from Miami?
Yeah, kind of the same questions. Is he somebody they're trying to bring in immediately? I mean, season's going to start here pretty soon. I think he's kind of more of, hey, if we can get him in here, redshirt him, and just have him hang on for next season and just add to our depth in terms of next season. I'm kind of leaning that way is what they're thinking, but who knows, NCAA is wild, and you never know.
I mean,
you never know what will happen. But to me, it seems
Marcus
like,
might find a sick grandma in Boonville he needs to come take care of, right?
but yeah, I mean, just to bring a kid in, even if he does end up committing, bringing him in and learning the system and everything like that, in an accelerated process when the season's about to start, I don't think that's likely feasible. So I think the more realistic option is if he does commit to Missouri, he's going to redshirt this year.
And I would think best case scenario for somebody like this, if people remember, it was right about a year ago that Chuck Hicks transferred from Wyoming. A little earlier than this, I think, but he basically was going through fall camp. I think kind of figured out he wasn't going to be the starter for the coach there. Entered the portal, committed to Missouri, got here in like mid to late August. And his situation was weird because everybody thought he wasn't going to be eligible. And then they got a waiver that like halfway through the season, he was eligible. He appeared in 2 games on defense, played some special teams, got his feet wet, all that. So I guess maybe best case scenario, if you do end up getting Marcus Clark, and we want to be clear, like Missouri has not gotten Marcus Clark. We don't know if they're going to get him. It's just, that's the name of the day. So that's what we're talking about. But maybe a situation like that. And I think, and this relates to another question, Steven Steiner is asking, why are MU fans up in arms? Well, look, first of all, you can always read Twitter or a message board and think somebody's up in arms. I don't think anybody's really up in arms. I think that's an exaggeration. But like, I do think, Sean, there's a discussion to be had here. And I said coming into this year, I expect fewer transfers in this class. I think Missouri's taken 22 over the last 2 years. I think that number's right. It might be a little bit higher. But point being, they're averaging about 10 to 12 transfers a year in the first 2 classes. I get it. He came in. The guys here weren't his guys. He needed to upgrade the talent. He needed to do it immediately, especially at certain positions. But I think once you're I think this needs to be the year. I don't think it's a great sign if you see double-digit transfers in year 3.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially when you think about, kind of the average of the last 2 years. I mean, you expect that, right? The first 2 years, not your guys. You kind of cycle some guys out, bring some guys in that you like. You kind of don't want to be doing double digits like in years 3 or 4 and moving forward. Now, Scott Frost isn't kind of an outlier there, but
because Scott Frost's trying to save his ass.
He's fighting for his job, exactly. So, it is odd. But I mean, you look at the Clark situation. I think it's really going to be one of those where he comes in, they stash him for a year, and he'll be part of the team next year for sure. So,
and look, if you think the kid's good enough to play, you go get him. But I think that. I think a lot of us on the outside just look at recruiting as just like this acquisition thing, right? Get as much talent as you can and worry about it later. Mm-hmm. And while, yes, you want a lot of talent, you also do have to – I think Eli's getting to the point where he has to look at the roster and think, okay, now is this kid good enough that I think he's worth bringing in when he's going to have 3 years left to play and I've got Davion Sistrunk and Darius Jackson and Ennis Rakestraw and theoretically maybe Chris Abrams-Drain and Lester Hewitt. I've got all these guys that I've already brought in. Now I'm bringing in, another guy that he's going to enter in his 3rd year. And you've got to think about what and I'm not saying that I know which one's right or wrong, but there's like a level of how good is the kid. And that's inverse to, how worth it he is to bring in, obviously, because you do have to think about how it impacts the guys that are currently on your roster. And then the reason I say I don't think you take double-digit transfers this year is because he just stacked the back-to-back best recruiting classes in school history. If those guys are as good as we said they are, as good as he thinks they are, then he shouldn't need double-digit transfers to fill holes on this roster in December.
Right. But, you kind of look at it too, just kind of just doing stuff with the transfer portal. It's kind of like almost there's about 3 tiers of transfer portal activity after the season, after spring ball, and then right before the fall season starts because, you're kind of seeing guys are not being starters or, kind of getting leapfrogged in the depth chart. And then they're hopping in the portal like right before the season starts. Now here's, and maybe in Drinkwitz, is assessing his, roster and he's saying, hey, we'll probably have some holes to fill in the secondary. And, hey, maybe I can go out and get somebody and just stash him for a year and have him available next year, So he's kind of thinking the same thing too, So maybe he's seeing some potential transfers down the road in the secondary on his team, and he's just trying to fill those right away when he sees a guy that's ready to play and thinks he gets capable of playing next year.
Potential transfer or, hey, I've seen Chris Abrams-Drain in some mock drafts, or Dalen Carnell came here as a corner. He's already at safety at that hybrid linebacker position. So there's a bunch of different things. And I don't think anybody needs to jump to a conclusion one way or the other based on the fact that, hey, we heard Missouri is possible for this kid, right? But I do think there are questions that you need to ask, and you guys have been asking questions. We've got some more of them. We'll get to them in a minute. But again, if we've had some people jump in since the beginning, and I want to draw your attention to that banner scrolling across the bottom. Our shows this year are going to be brought to you. We're going to do this show every Tuesday. I'm going to do a show with Gerard Hamilton every Wednesday, focusing more on the current team, but they're brought to you by James Carlton State Farm. He is located in St. Louis. James has a team of 8 in his office. They're tenured. They are all very well trained. They invest in the business and give you an experience that you're not going to get anywhere else. You can get in touch with them by phone. You can get in touch with them online. You can drop by the office in Webster if you want to. But James wants to just have a chat with you and offer you the best options he can give you as far as all your different insurance needs may go. And as James says, if your insurance costs a leg and an arm, call James Carlton State Farm. And if you do that, if you just call James and get a quote, whether or not you end up being his customer and trusting all of your insurance needs to him. As a big supporter of Mizzou, if you just call him and get a quote, he is going to donate $20 to Advancing Missouri Athletes, the Mizzou NIL Collective. Now, you do have to mention Power Mizzou and, hey, this is where I saw this for this to happen, because James is not just going to hang up every phone call he gets and immediately call Lawrence Bowers and donate $20 to Advancing Missouri Athletes, I don't think. So at least mention Power Mizzou or this broadcast when you call James. But logo's up in the left-hand corner of your screen with the website, and scrolling across the bottom is all the different ways you can get in touch with him. So make sure to take that down if you're looking for insurance, or if you maybe just kind of want to make sure you're getting the best deal you can and check things out. So Kyle asked a question kind of along the lines of what we were talking about a minute ago, but do you expect Mizzou to go heavy on the portal to fill out this class? Again, I think every year you're probably looking at 5 or 6 at this point, but I don't think you're looking at 10 or 12.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think every team's going to look in the transfer portal, just how heavy are they going to look into it. And it's like you said, Gabe, I mean, if you go double digits in the portal again, that kind of shows you maybe just how not confident you are on the roster right now. Maybe you missed
on some guys.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, do we expect them to go in the portal? Yeah, for sure. How heavy, we don't know. I mean, and we'll see. We'll see some people, that's really going to depend on throughout the season who hits the portal from Missouri and who hits it after the season's over too. So,
yeah, and this is a thing that stretches into May, June.
Mm-hmm.
This is not over in December. But the interesting position portal-wise for me for Missouri is defensive line, because they went super heavy on it this year, but they did it with older guys, right? I mean, DJ Coleman is a grad transfer. Jaden Jernigan could have 2 years left, but this could be it. Josh Landry, Christian Williams, same way, could have multiple years left, but not necessarily. So if Trajan Jeffcoat's probably going to leave, Isaiah McGuire could leave. So what you don't want to do is find yourself in a position where you're replacing 1-year guys with 1-year guys and just doing that every year. I mean, a grad transfer here and there is a good situation, but also next year is going to be the time Marquise Gracial needs to be a factor. Right.
Right.
Jalen Marshall needs to get some playing time. Travion Ford, Kai Montgomery, some of these guys they brought in the last couple of years. Next year really is the time you should see that start to hit. So I think they'll still take transfers, but I think hopefully you're looking at just like 1 or 2, total Band-Aid 1-year guys, as opposed to having 4 or 5 of those guys and just getting in this cycle.
Yeah. Unique situation for Missouri this year, especially when you talk about just guys that are probably not going to be here next year. So, and guys that they brought in that they knew that ahead of time. So yeah, you definitely want to see guys like Montgomery, Ford, and all those guys really kind of step up and be depth, at least be depth guys this year and get a lot of snaps, get a lot of experience, get ready for next year, and hopefully you don't have to dip in the portal that much.
Right, and it's really, to me, about what kind of guys are you getting out of the portal. What I liked about Missouri's class this year in the portal was you're talking about a guy that played at Oklahoma State, a guy that played at Oregon, a guy that played a little bit at Baylor, a guy that was maybe not going to play at Texas A&M, but they just brought in one of the best recruiting classes in school history, so it's a little bit understandable. You're getting them from other Power 5 places. You're not as much going and filling in from G5 programs or lower than that. I'd rather take a guy who had the potential and maybe just was a little bit blocked and didn't play as much as he wanted at one of these good Power 5. And it's not just a Power 5 program. Like Oklahoma State played for a Big 12 title. Oregon played for a Pac-12 title. But Baylor won a Big 12 title. So you're getting guys who have been on good teams. I generally would much more like to see that rather than going what I think is the traditional basketball model, which is going to like the G5 or the mid-major and saying, hey, this guy's too good for that level. Let's see if he's good enough for this one.
True, yeah. I agree with you on that. Definitely for football side, you get guys with Power 5 experience. I mean, the guys they brought in had a lot of experience too, so that goes a long way. They're part of winning locker rooms. That helps as well, So I think that's you can take a flyer on a G5 guy that's all conference or, all, FCS or whatever. But you don't want to do that too much, I don't think, when you're talking SEC football as well.
Right. Now, sometimes you come across a guy like DJ Coleman, who was an FCS second team All-American. And I'm telling you, Sean, like I saw that dude in person and I'm like, oh yeah, he's an SEC football player.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell. Now I'm not saying he's going to have a huge year or anything, but he looks like an SEC football player. There's no question about that. Brett Smith wants to know, why do you think they haven't been able to land 4-star guys as many 4-star guys this year? And I think it's a combination of things. I mean, they've lost them to Oklahoma, to Alabama. They're not losing these kids to bad programs by any stretch of the imagination. But also, I think it's fair to say we're getting to the point where I think recruits are going to start being the way fans are starting to be this year, which is, okay, cool. Love all the potential, but now we need to see this translate. Right. And I'm not saying that's why Caden Green went to Oklahoma or anything, but I think with this recruiting class, you will start to see, okay, we love the message. We love what we hear, but now we need to see that show up to feel good about jumping in. Right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you kind of, to put that in perspective, what you just said, I mean, just imagine if Missouri had, 8-9 wins last year, and we're recruiting, you're recruiting when Caden Green come to Missouri, with Miles Smith, they come to Missouri, if they see the trajectory is going up in wins and they see there's a lot of buzz around the program, I think that's going to go a long way. I mean, that's why this year is very crucial, for the staff. If you can get to that 8-9 win plateau, man, I mean, that'll just serve you well for that. Winning cures everything. Winning helps you recruit better. That's just the way it is in college football. So, yeah, the trajectory has to keep going up. That's why this, like I said, going back to saying this is a crucial year for Missouri.
And one other 4-star, we haven't talked about this kid because so far as I know, the kid hasn't talked. But, do we have any idea what's going on with Marvin Burke since he visited Missouri a couple months ago?
No, we don't.
Yeah, I don't.
No update, just that he took officials to Missouri, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. Oklahoma and LSU is in his top 5. I'm pretty sure he's probably going to take some officials to those schools during the fall. So it's probably going to extend out into the fall. I mean, he may not sign, he may not make a commitment till signing day in December. So who knows?
And could also come down to, is he a take at Oklahoma or LSU? I'm not saying he's not. I just don't know.
Right.
So. All right, Cam Klauser had a question too. Hard to tell with the portal stuff, but what position group will be the biggest hole to fill for the 2023 season? I mean, it is a little hard to know who's good. Defensive line, I think, is going to be, again, big for this class. They've already got their quarterback, so I think that's good. They've got a running back in the 23 class, and they got DeForest Jones, so I don't think you have to have that. I think they're pretty good at wide receiver because they got so many young guys last year.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm guessing maybe offensive, defensive line, right?
I would think so. Yeah. If I was just projecting out, might get a linebacker too. But yeah, I'd say the line's going to be your biggest plays you're going to go after in the transfer portal.
Yeah, and in the recruiting class, and probably maybe especially offensive line a little heavier in the portal because you did miss on McVay and on Green. Now you're still going to have some guys, and I'm not saying you expected those guys to come in and immediately contribute, but I think offensive line is the biggest place where I still look at this roster and say, if they want to play for important things in this league, they've got to have a little bit more star power there than they have.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the class right now. I mean, they need an offensive line commitment. They're trying to get one, but they just haven't got one yet. Hopefully they get Reichert, but they still want to probably grab at least a couple more. And, and there might be a point in time, middle of the season, they're like, hey, we'll just wait till the transfer portal and see what pops up, and we'll just grab a couple old linemen, so you never know. They're always assessing those situations as they go along. So, but yeah, I can see definitely offensive line being kind of a priority for Missouri to hit the transfer portal this offseason for sure.
No question. One more question from Steven Steiner. Does the new defensive coordinator and cornerback coach have an effect on how they view the roster and recruiting, and could that play into the portal? Likewise with the quarterback coach. I mean, I think Missouri's pretty set at quarterback with Brady Cook right now, then Sam Horn here, and Tyler Macon's still here. I don't want to gloss over him. Sam Horn here, Jabari Johnson committed for the next class. So I think they're pretty set there. But yeah, there could be a little something too, right? A new defensive coordinator who's a safeties coach and a new cornerbacks coach coming in, and maybe they view some of the talent on the roster a little bit differently than the last guys did. So maybe, whereas the last guys would have said, hey, we're good, maybe the new cornerbacks coach does say, hey, I need one more guy or something like that.
Yeah, I would think they would have some pretty good input, just especially just talking to a few kids and talking about Missouri's defense and, the scheme and everything. They said it's a little, it's different than it had been. It's more aggressive. So, yeah, I would say like Blake Baker would, probably have some input on a lot of guys that he's trying to get into that defense and fit in his scheme properly. So.
Yeah. So we've answered the questions. We've told you can panic if you want to, but you don't have to. I don't know. Hey, Sean, I think unless I'm missing something other than this Marcus Clark thing, which just kind of popped up today, it kind of seems like a little bit of a holding pattern until Logan Reichert. Like nothing else really seems imminent at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lull period. Coaches will be able to go out and on the road and evaluate kids in person starting September 1st. So I think a lot of coaches are kind of, unless they've got obviously Reichert's still out there waiting, and so you'll probably see some new targets kind of pop up once coaches get out on the road. They probably got a list of kids they want to go see and evaluate in person. They'll probably throw out some more offers, try to get them on campus. So that's kind of how the cycle goes. So I think after September 1st, we'll kind of see some more targets pop up, and we'll start following some more kids that Missouri's throwing out offers to and everything and evaluating in person. So fun times ahead.
We'll squeeze in one more question real quick before we get out of here. Kyle asked, any chance with Jeremiah Love, or is he a Notre Dame guy? I don't know if he's a Notre Dame guy, but I don't get any sense he's a Missouri guy.
He may be an A&M guy. So it's Michigan, Notre Dame, A&M, but I think he may be an A&M guy. But yeah, probably not. He won't be a Missouri guy. So
yeah, unless something changes fairly significantly between now and signing day. So I don't know, Sean, did we miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I mean, that last question, that kind of goes back to maybe a little bit of disappointment in the recruiting class so far, because when you think about Jeremiah Love, back in the spring, Missouri was like, this is first. I think it was first Power 5 offer, not his first offer, but they were in really good. They talked, and then just the flood of offers came in for him, and now he's kind of is where he is, and I mean the kid blew up, and he's got a lot of options, so that's just kind of how it goes.
I think it was February. He was tweeting like 3 and 4 offers a day. It was crazy. So. So, yeah, we're going to do this with you guys every Tuesday. Again, the goal is 2:30. There may be times that has to move a little forward or back based on schedules and things along those lines. But the goal is 2:30 every Tuesday afternoon. Hope that those of you who watched will continue to join us and watch. Will maybe give us a like on the YouTube channel, do all the things that put us in the evil algorithms in front of as many eyes as you can. We will, if you weren't able to catch this live, we will make it into a podcast as soon as Sean and I are done here. We will push that out on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, everywhere that our podcast goes. And it's possible to have all this fancy stuff that we're doing this year thanks to our friend James Carlton, who got in touch with us over the summer and wanted to team up on something. James Carlton State Farm in St. Louis that's where you need to go. At least, look, we always say, just give our subscribers, Missouri fans, people that have your common interest, just give them the first shot, right? We're not going to promise that it's always going to be your best deal or what you end up going with, but everybody needs insurance. I think, I don't know, Sean, correct me. I think it's kind of the law, right? You have to have some sort of insurance for a lot of things.
Yeah, especially when you're in wrecks. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Driving, home insurance. I don't know if it's a law that you have to have health insurance, but I think it's highly recommended. All of those things, just get in touch with James Carlton at James Carlton State Farm. And if, hey, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but give James a shot. I've had a few conversations with him. He's a guy that, look, he's not going to give you the hard sell. He's an easygoing guy, really good dude. If nothing else, call him up, talk a little Mizzou football with him. James and his team of 8 located in Webster Groves. They can take care of you in Illinois. They can take care of you in Missouri, either one. But 8 people in a single agency, pretty big team. So they're going to be able to take care of you. Not going to have a lot of wait time. the claims process. They've got people that try to make that as stress-free as they possibly can. And once again, James wants to help Mizzou out by helping you out. So if you call him, you get a quote. He is, and you mentioned Power Mizzou, he's going to donate $20 to Advancing Missouri Athletes, the Mizzou NIL Collective. And you can see we're going to let that banner roll across one more time. If the old's on here, if you still do Facebook, he's on Facebook. There's the Facebook page. He's got a phone number. He's got the regular website, carltoninsurance.net. So any number of ways that you can get in touch with James. We certainly appreciate his contribution. Appreciate you guys being here. I will be back tomorrow with Gerard Hamilton. For those of you who haven't met him yet, you'll get a chance to meet him. We'll talk a little Mizzou football, season opener a little over a week away. And I don't know, Sean will be beating the bushes, figuring out what's going to happen between now and September 8th with Logan Reichert, I guess.
Yeah, I will be. Stay in touch.
They don't call him the best in the business for nothing. Thanks, Sean. We'll talk to you guys later.